During a subway ride, I had the idea to ask some of my compatriots to present themselves and their life stories to my camera. This way, the film should not just be about them, but rather with them as collaborating participants who co-determine their representation. After the first editing version was completed, I invited them to watch and criticize the film. What you see is the second version.
Say when you're rolling.
Rolling.
One for me first.
Where were you born?
Where? In Berlin, Germany, in May 1912. Okay. I went to school in Berlin, graduated from school, but we were Austrian citizens. My father was born in Vienna. My mother was born in Berlin. And I went to school there, graduated from high school in 31. Nothing to see with yours. Okay. So put that this way. I changed my first name when I arrived in this country. To begin with, Heinz doesn't sound very English. I intended to become a citizen. And number two, as our ship, I came by ship here with the SS America. I think by now that was scrapped. Entered New York Harbor, I spotted a sign that was talking about Heinz tomato soup and varieties of I thought I'm not tomato soup, I'm Henry. As soon as the war was over, I became Austrian again. I arrived here with $600 and 3 cameras. In the beginning it was very difficult because one of my first visits was to the office of the motion picture cameras. And the business agent told me, Henry, the fact that they allowed you in here as an immigrant is proof enough for us too that you were not a Nazi, in no Nazi organizations. That you had served in the Air Force, German Air Force, we don't hold against you, we were drafted. But I have here about 200 applications already, and more than half of them have served in the American military, and they come first. Second, you have to be a citizen become a citizen before we can accept your application, and that takes 5 years. And after that, it may take another 5, maybe 10 years, so that adds up to 15 years. I said, thank you. Months later, I went up there again. 2 months later, I went up again. Every time he told me nothing happened. When I went up there the 4th time, he said, Henry, nothing happened, nothing will change, but something did happen for you. We have a competition now. A new union was formed here in New York. ADTFC, Association of Documentary and Television Film Cameramen. They take you, instead of $500, they take you for $50, and all you have to show is a green card, which is a proof that you're a legal immigrant and that you have the right experience. That union took me in immediately, $50. After I came to the United States, my reputation as a flying cameraman continued for a while. All kinds of helicopters for the Air Force. Here I look more like an astronaut than like a cameraman.
Look. Like the Queen of England has the dogs like this. I came to the United States when I was 4 years old. I was born in Vienna, and I believe we left in May. I think we left in May 38, either March or May 38. And we went to Italy, and then from Italy we went to England, and from England we went to Ireland, and from Ireland then we came to the United States. Well, when we arrived here, I was a child, I was 4 years old. I had already been in school in England and in Ireland, and I do remember that children kind of made fun of me because I had this very good English accent, very good British accent, and apparently I also had very good English table manners. And we lived in Brooklyn, and it wasn't, and I guess like every child, you want to be like other people. So I quickly lost my English accent, and I hope I kept my table manners. I guess when I went to college, people didn't talk about their nationalities very much, because I never talked about being a European. This is like in the 50s and 60s. I just wanted to be like a blonde, blue-eyed American like everyone else, so I never talked about my background or my history. I spoke German only with my grandparents, but my father didn't want anything to do with anything German. And even today, I have a lot, I shouldn't say if it's a German film, but I have a lot of problems with buying things made in Germany because I still don't know who might be profiting from it. I'll never buy anything from Krupp's or from Braun, and I wonder whose hands touch things. Although I have no problem with younger Germans, it's just Germans of a certain generation. So we never spoke, and that comes from my father. We never spoke German at home. My father, for instance, refused, when we were leaving, when we were fleeing, he refused to travel under the Austrian passport because the Austrian passport was taken over by Germany, and he refused to, he didn't want to recognize Germany or Hitler or the Nazis taking over the country that he had loved so much.
I just think that the whole Nazi thing is played out. I think it's time to let it go. And I as an American growing up in the United States, the only thing I ever learned about Germany was Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler. It was the only time I ever learned anything about Germany. I don't know anything else about the country, the people, the history. All I know about is the invasion of Europe by Hitler and Nazi Germany. So it's a problem for me. But I do gotta say that they have beautiful women, Birgit.
The continent of Europe is so wide, mein Herr.
That's right.
Not only up and down, but side to side, mein Herr.
Say side to side.
Side to side.
Right in there, right, feel the roots.
Side
to side.
Side to side.
Side to side.
Side.
On the notes now. Side to side, just
Side to side, mein
So
Herr.
you're kind of floating in there, really feel an edge. Just make it ugly.
Side to side, side.
Yeah.
Side to side, mein Herr.
Keep going.
I couldn't ever cross it if I tried, mein Herr.
That's it.
Meine Mutter schreibt hier, ich will hier raus. She writes, I wanna get out of here. It's kind of it fits. I live in New York since 6 years, and I'm originally from the countryside from Germany, from a little small village in southern Germany that has 4,000 inhabitants, and it's very rural. The world of my parents is pretty narrow. They live in this small little village, and the neighbors are spies. My mother feels like that, and the butcher tells lies, and there's a lot of constant complaining about life, and never really doing something about it that I just don't want to be part of anymore. I was growing up pretty anti-America and not liking anything that comes out of America, and I thought New York would look very different. I had no idea that it would be how it is. And I just loved it.
When I met Walter, when he spoke to me, I at first thought he was French or some other European. I knew he was European, and I said, "Oh, where are you from?" And he went, "I'm from Germany." I kind of went, and then he charmed me because I don't think Walter is a typical German. I think he is, he's sensitive and he's a gentleman, and he doesn't get in my space, which my experience with other people from Germany has been sort of in my area and not sort of letting me have my space.
I always admire those some guy who plants peaches or something, and he never had a camera in his face, and the camera team comes and he's so totally normal and talks about his job. I always get kind of nervous when I know it, and it looks like he would talk to someone he knows for years. I'm kind of aware that the thing is on me. It's not. It doesn't look fake.
No. I mean, with you, it's no problem.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
This is Lake Mead in Nevada. My camera with a 1000mm lens, with which we followed the Bluebird, that was the name of the speedboat, and that won the Oscar that year, and it's signed Crashing the Water Barrier, Las Vegas, 1955. That was 3 years after my arrival, and that was great luck to win an Oscar after such a short time in the United States. This is Jackie, and that's in California, in Hollywood. I was doing a commercial, and she was for a while visiting with us. Louis Armstrong, about a half a year before he died, we did a biographical thing with him, and I just measure the light there. Harry Truman and myself. I just told him, Mr. President, please come here, we are ready to shoot. My camera was down in the audience in the hall. And he obeyed, but instead of taking a comb, he did it with his hand. I mentioned my friend Peter Gorlinsky was his name, who graduated from high school together with me, had to flee Nazi Germany because he was Jewish. But he went to Argentina and became, believe it or not, chief editor of a German newspaper in Buenos Aires. A couple of years ago, he won the Bundesverdienstkreuz for merits about Germany. The same fellow had to flee Germany because he was considered a Jewish outcast. That's how the world goes.
This is based on a photograph that the Nazis took of women in Vienna. And this could easily have been people in my family. And as I was painting them, I identified with the different people, either as if I could have been any one of those people, or one of those women could have been people in my family or my friends. For the first time, it was shown at the Austrian Consulate General in New York City. And I think that was very important. It was important that the Consul General had the courage to show this. He showed this and several other of my Holocaust paintings. And it was very important for me because it was the first time I was able to see my paintings outside of the studio, and to see that in that context, I was very happy to do that. Also showing that painting there, those paintings there, helped me reconcile somewhat my feelings towards Austria. This painting is called Fence. It's the third version I did of this. It was a very difficult subject. I wanted to see how much of this idea of separation and mother and child, or mother and children, I could do with giving the minimum information. And there's some writing there, and it's kind of incomplete. Like in all my paintings, I like the viewer to have to fill it in and to figure it out. Well, you can see the word separated. You can see the word family. So that in one instant. Then you can see the word some. And then you see gather, longer. And there are a few, it's fading in and out. And this painting is called The Last Journey. Is it in focus? Is this focused? I don't know. You have to imagine their faces.
Play.
Well, the sound is a mixture of Latin
I was saying, and read the letters that I wrote, and seeing all these mistakes. It was pretty tough.
It is prom night here at FX, and the Prom House Band, the last of the international Playboys. We've got Walter and Greg here from the group. Thank you guys for coming and playing tonight. You are absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Listen, how did you guys come across the sound that you've developed? What exactly is the sound that you guys play?
Well, the sound is a mixture of Latin music and Las Vegas jazz, as we call it. Kind of the old tradition of Dean Martin, mixed up with Latin styles.
And is this how you guys started out playing, or when did you get together? Because I heard something about you started as a duo, really?
Actually, I started the band with a guitar player, and then step by step added other instruments, percussion and a trumpet and drums, and then now finally ended up with a 9-piece band.
Excellent.
So he was the last one who joined the band, actually.
But Greg pulls it all together over there. He's so smooth.
Thank you.
Here we were hired for a party on TV, and that's an example of how the band sounds. Let me find this for you. Okay, here we go.
Guys, could we have another number?
1, 2, 1, 2. Everybody mambo.
It was a prom party, and we were hired to play several tunes, and the guests there were dancing through the whole time. They had some different interviews and stuff with it, and in between my band was playing for the people to dance to. That's one of the tunes I wrote called Blue Moon at the Bell Cafe. I do the montuno on the accordion. These figures are normally played on the piano, my piano player. And I have the guitar, and that works pretty well together, sharing these things.
Nicely done. We thank you for coming out here and helping us for Karen Bryant's prom and everybody else's out here. Alaska, the International Playboys are going to be here all night. They're going to be providing this music. We're going to teach you everything you need to know to have a wang bangs, thank you, sort of great prom.
How did the name come up? Well, my wife thought of the name. And I was never good with titles, names or anything. She came up with a name for the store, Main Squeeze, as well. She's just has brilliant ideas. I'm better in executing ideas than coming up with them. The clubs here are very cheap. They don't pay a thing. They put you on a show with 5 other bands, and then whether you pay your musicians or not, they give you whatever they think or whatever they think people brought in, and you have to share it with other bands. And sometimes I ended up with $40 or $80, which is ridiculous.
That's 1931, Leni Riefenstahl. I was assistant cameraman. Hans Schneeberger was my boss. And the title of the movie was The Blue Light. Museum Modern Art in New York here has a very good print of it. The 1936 Olympics. Riefenstahl again. I went down by car to the south of Greece for the lighting of the Olympic fire and carried it through 7 countries to Berlin. But at the German border I was relieved and sent to Frankfurt and boarded the airship Hindenburg. That's the captain of the Hindenburg. We are flying over Germany there. As you know, a year and a half later, that ship exploded in Lakehurst here in the United States. For the Olympic Games, it's stopped over the Olympic Stadium the day of the opening. With the nose down, I was with the camera in the captain's gondola and shooting down. Unfortunately, on that day, the weather wasn't so good. And when Hitler ordered her to do Triumph of the Will, which she had done before the Olympics, she didn't want to do it, but he ordered her. But she's a perfectionist, and once she had to do it, she did it to the very end, and too good, because it became a masterpiece. I was sitting here for 20 years ago at the Museum of Modern Art, and they showed Triumph of the Will, Riefenstahl's much disputed film. And when the lights went on, everybody applauded, including a Jewish student who was sitting next to me. And I said, "Why do you applaud Leni Riefenstahl?" He said, "Well, politics is one thing, and art is another thing," and she was a great artist.
She's eating a tape. She's eating your tape.
No, this is not very healthy either.
No, it isn't. Oh, I know. It's wet. It's disgusting. Get your toy. Where's your toy, sweetheart? People think that paintings about the Holocaust have to be black and white with maybe some red in there for blood. And that's because most of our knowledge of the Holocaust comes from the black and white photographs that were taken. And sometimes people are surprised to see that the colors might be bright or pastel or soft, but I think if you read people's memoirs, events very often would take place on beautiful days. And there's always a contrast between how beautiful nature is and the sunlight and the brightness and maybe terrible events happening. You don't want me to put these other lights on? Huh? Because the color isn't very good. Juno, you're on candid camera, you're on television. There was a very, very large article on me in the New York Jewish Week, which is a weekly magazine, a weekly newspaper, and I think it was 1995, very full-page article. And there was a photograph of me in front of these four women. And I thought how great it was, because the way the photograph was taken, it was almost as if I was one of these women. So I thought it'd be a great idea to paint myself in front of them as kind of my comment on these paintings. I shouldn't show you that. I shouldn't do that. It shouldn't act like it's more from my imagination.
I'm getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I meditate for half an hour every day, so that this life here doesn't stress me so much. And I make exercises, and I go jogging before I go to work, and then I start working around 10, and then go from there straight to rehearsal, and then maybe afterwards to a band meeting.
Jewish, and many Holocaust survivors live there, and I was sort of influenced by them. And then I moved to Minneapolis and was introduced to a very Lutheran, German, Swedish background, and still had very strong feelings about the Second World War and the German involvement in it. And so I never, and I'm German, I'm a quarter German, so it wasn't that I hated my background or anything, but I wasn't very sympathetic to the culture. I think Americans' ideas about Germans are almost, very regimented, not flexible. I think that is a very important term. And physically, Walter is a very straight person and stands up, and you have a good backbone. But emotionally and all of the other ways, you're much more flexible and easy to get along with. And a lot of Germans that I've run into, if I go to a video store, they're standing right in front of the boxes, so you can't read anything, and I always feel like I have to sort of move around them.
Wie blau ist das Meer, wie groß kann der Himmel sein? Ich schau hoch vom Mastkorb weit in die Welt hinein. Nach vorn geht der Blick zurück, darf kein Seemann schauen. Kap Horn liegt auf Lee, jetzt heißt es auf Gott vertrauen.
What did you actually do during the war, during the Second World War?
I was drafted in the, excuse my English, in the bloody German Air Force as a combat cameraman. And it started, first thing I had to do, fly with a special group to Poland and film the air war in Poland. And I still have the still pictures. I always had a picture like this one. No, it was a Leica then. And I'm still wondering nowadays that they never confiscated my still pictures. I had to, of course, the film I had to send to Berlin. Then I've asked them, and I have still all those pictures from World War II. This is burning Warsaw at the end of the campaign in Poland. I shot this from a Fieseler Stork, which was a very slow plane. You could start and land on a football field or on a tennis court. All these buildings are burned out. And this year, our people are standing in line for water. This is part of burning Warsaw too. First they sent me to Poland, then Norway, Italy, and I was 5 months with the Rommel Corps in Africa. That's in a Heinkel 111. That's on my left here is the pilot. You only see the steering gear, steering wheel, steering column. This, believe it or not, was the driver of a British tank. This. Oh, this was Marshal Goering, the number 2 of the Nazis.
I'm looking for, I did an over life-size painting in a collaborative feminist piece, which I can't find right now. It was called The Sister Chapel, which was the work of 11 artists, and we all did a painting 9 feet by 5 feet of a different female hero, and I decided to do Durga, who is an Indian goddess, a Hindu goddess, Durga. It's kind of a self-portrait. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but this is me. So you can see the size of the painting in relationship to the person. I was asked to be in an exhibition called Vegetarian Art Show, and they looked at my work and they invited me, and I had given them some photographs of a baby calf, a veal calf, as well as a few of the works of the monkeys. And I wrote a statement about my feelings of vegetarianism have to do with compassion for all living things. Well, to make a long story short, they told me that it was too depressing to look at. The person who invited me to the exhibition said it was too depressing. So they just hung up like one picture of a monkey that doesn't look so tortured. So much for idealism and point of view and philosophy. So I was a little bit upset, but I was happy to be in that show. Shouldn't give them any publicity after they were so ridiculous.
Yeah, but
I like the idea. Yeah, and because I was asked, I don't know how they knew that I was vegetarian, but they asked me to be in it.
long-time girlfriend there, and all my friends had a cat and a car, and my parents, my whole family, everyone was in Germany. And the only thing I wanted here was getting a new perspective on things and experience a different country for more than for 3 weeks or 4, which you normally spend on a vacation. So it was pretty difficult to make that decision. And yeah, I felt pretty bad going back and tell my girlfriend that I would stay here. And so I had to do that because I made the decision finally, and so I had to do what had to be done. I went back and she picked me up from the airport, and it was quite a sad situation. And I immediately started organizing, selling everything I had, give it away, give my car to my brother and my apartment to a friend. My cat died in the meantime on some disease, wasn't figured out.
Vorbei sein, nur Erinnerung an Stunden der Liebe bleibt noch an Land zurück. Meine Braut ist die See.
I had a little room in a basement out in Brooklyn, and on 14th Street, and did some little jobs to support myself. My first job was making bagels out in Queens, in Forest Hills. I made $3.50 an hour, which is barely worth to mention. But I didn't have a green card, neither did I have a work permit, and that was the first thing I got. I thought I would start from there and get to some better salary somehow, which I did. Can you tell me, or can someone tell me whether the camera is running or not?
It's running all the time.
Oh, okay.
I'm not turning on and off.
Yeah.
I'm just running. He likes to waste my tape. Okay.
Fluch des Krieges. Im Schnee des Tien-Shan grast das dürre Ross. 3 Heere sanken vor dem wilden Tross. Die gelbe Wüste liegt von weißen Knochen voll. Der Pferdeschrei wie schrille Flöte schollt. Es schlingen Eingeweide sich von Baum zu Baum in Schnüren, die Raben krächzend auf die Zweige führen. Soldaten liegen tot auf des Palastes Stufen. Es mag der tote General die Toten rufen. So sei verflucht der Krieg, verflucht das Werk der Waffen. Es hat der Weise nichts mit ihrem Wahn zu schaffen. Er wird die Waffe nur als letzte Rettung schwingen, durch den Tod der Welt das Leben zu bezwingen. That's what Owen translated into German by Klabund.
I did a whole series of monotypes about animals and cruelty to animals, a whole series about fur farms. Talk about animal welfare, and I have the dog in a cage.
Eating plastic.
About eating plastic, right, and in a cage. I'm very much against fur. I think it's totally unnecessary. I can show you something that I've done. People have donated old fur coats to this organization that I'm involved with. And this was looks like an old fox coat on which we've painted what looks like blood. People should be aware of the bloodiness of fur, that fur is not something beautiful, but fur comes from death and pain. And you see these are little creatures on the coat. And people don't realize, but it takes about anywhere between 60 and 90 of these little minks to make a fur coat in order for these animals to be killed.
their love blesses you.
Are you playing now?
The reason to open up the store is I wanted to combine my interest and my abilities, and the location is good. This is becoming, in the future, it looks like it's becoming the new happening place here, the Lower East Side. So everything fell into place. So the store was available, and I lived just a few entrances away, and the rent was affordable. Phoebe Leger agreed to come here and perform, and it was a wonderful performance. She's the symbol of modern, sexy accordion playing in New York, and she was just perfect for the store opening.
I want you all to send Walter love, because Walter has made the accordion an instrument and not a joke. And Claire, his wife, and let's hear it for Claire, who said, I married Walter because he played the accordion.
Well, I thought the opening party was quite a big success. I didn't count the people, it was probably 100. The press was here, New York Times was here, and they took the photo and put an article about it in the Sunday Times. After the party was over, the alcohol, the gin, vodka and wine was more or less gone. So it was a total success.
Okay, I would like to talk. Oh, he didn't tape. Yeah.
He didn't tape?
No, we did. We need a new tape and another tape.
My favorite language? Obviously, it's still German. When I think of Germany, I think of the Germany of Heine, Goethe, Kleist, whatever. Many of them. I've been back to Germany a dozen times since, and every time I discovered that there are new words, which only 2 years ago I learned a new word, a slang word for television. I found it very amusing. It's called Glotze. Glotze. It's very hard to translate. At night when I can sleep, I'm writing puns by rewriting German sayings, and they get a different sense. It means something different the way I read it. So I'm reading you a few. Schlechter Rat ist billig. Wer nachts nicht schlafen kann, der fange damit morgens an. Here's another one. Man soll den Sarg nicht vor dem Grabe loben. Which means you should not praise the coffin before the grave.
When I lived in Paris in 1985, I had a young woman that posed for me, and she was from Bremen. And we talked very, very frankly, and she said I was the first Jew that she ever met. And she knew her parents and her grandparents especially were involved in the war, and they refused to talk about it. And I think that was very healing for me to talk with her, and I think it was very healing for her to talk with me. So that was really the first time I ever discussed it with somebody who was German. I have no problem with younger people. My problem is with a German or Austrian, let's say, over a certain age. I would always wonder where were they during the war.
Ready for my close-up?
Right.
No, you're a star.
Yeah. June, stop it. No eating. With Germany, I have very mixed feelings. I'm interested in the art. There are a lot of wonderful museums there that I'd like to go to see. But I don't really know how comfortable I would feel traveling there.
So you never traveled to Germany?
Never was in Germany. I don't feel very rooted in this country, or not in the same way. And I think it's a matter of feeling like you're really rooted and really belong there. I mean, I don't know where my great-great-grandparents lived, and they certainly didn't live here, which I think is very different philosophically than somebody who knows exactly where their ancestors are from and where they lived.
Okay, let's go.
But I think it's something about, basically values and ways of thinking, where I feel always very at home with Europeans. When I meet people who have a European background or their parents are Europeans, I tend to, have more in common with them on a deep level.
It describes our wedding. As a wedding present, I gave him card Jim gave me, Jim and Sarah. I also wanted to show you how my father grew up. In this, in Franken, that's in the middle of Germany, in a little village that's called Klein Rothenburg. It has all cobblestone and it's a very, very tiny village, and it has a whole wall around the village. When you are there, it looks like 100 years ago. When you go to the cemetery, like every second stone says my last name on it. It's pretty amazing. That's my uncle in his 300-year-old wine cellar. And these are my relatives in the restaurant that they have, where they make their own bratwurst. I don't like the taste of meat anymore, and I feel in eating something, a dead animal, you eat the death struggle, kind of eat that with the food. I hardly eat white flour and hardly any dairy. I drink soy milk, and I feel much better. I feel really good. Food has become very important to me since I live here, and I feel that in order to do all the things that I need to do, I need a lot of energy, and I really have to be very conscientious about what I eat.
I got very nice response. Everybody came over here and wished me luck, and we hope you do well here, and then they offered their help if you need anything. And so with my neighbors here, the store right next door, they sell these yarmulkes, the skull caps, and When they get deliveries and are closed, I take them, or I use their fax machine, and I'm very happy about that. And this is the classical Lower East Side. Essex Street shows up in all the traditional movies about the Jewish part of Manhattan. This is the Jewish Lower East Side. The Chinese population is coming in here at that point, but this is still, Essex Street is still the very Jewish. So that's, for example, why I'm closed on Saturdays. I would be the only open store here in this neighborhood. Mama's Kosher Restaurant, that's the next door on the other side, kosher restaurant. It's open daytimes, they close at 6 o'clock, so I can't go to have dinner there. I'm not crazy about their coffee either, but the food is really good, I like it. Kosher food has to be proved by a rabbi. It's not only food, even toothpaste can be kosher, or salt or whatever. Has to be proven by a rabbi. One thing is, for example, meat has to be, the animal has to be slaughtered a certain way, and they can't put meat and dairy products together, that whole thing. I can't explain it in detail because I don't know much about it. As a German man, I love the German food. Sausages, I like it warm and fatty. For example, I get my sausages from a Bavarian butcher in Illinois, and all kinds, Leberkäse and all kinds of sausages and Wieners and Frankfurters and Weisswürste, everything. On the other hand, it's amazing the stuff that, like fish here in Chinatown you can get, and fresh salmon. You would pay a fortune in Germany. When I'm in the mood for some fast, cheap food, I go to Chinese restaurants here around the corner and get some duck on rice with vegetables for $3 or $4. That tastes good. I don't eat the McDonald's Kentucky Fried Chicken stuff.
I was always fascinated with the Lower East Side, Hester Street particularly. And Walter also was fascinated with it because right across the street from us is where Singer used to be in the news. You know, the newspaper was right there.
It was a socialist newspaper. Jewish Daily Forward, I think. That's what it was.
Right across the street.
And he had his garden cafeteria where he hung out and wrote all his famous great stories. Now it's a Chinese restaurant, but that used to be a very famous Jewish cafeteria hangout. Yeah.
Here's another one. Ausgeschlossen, sagte der Schlosser. Ohne Dietrich kommt hier keiner rein. That reminds me of Marlene Dietrich, whom I met when we shot the Oscar-winning picture in Las Vegas. When the shooting was successfully finished, our producer-director, my friend Connie Kalser, invited the crew to a gala dinner at the Sahara Hotel, and in that ballroom, Marlene Dietrich was performing with her show. I decided I go behind stage. So on the way to the basement, I thought, I'm not a schoolboy anymore, stupid what I'm doing, and I was ready to turn around, but I didn't, I kept going. And I came to the backstage rooms for the actor, and there was one of Dietrich's dancers, and I stopped there and said, excuse me, I'm from Berlin and I'd like to congratulate Miss Dietrich, and would you do me a favor and you go in first and tell her if it's all right with her that I talk to you. And that girl said, oh, she isn't like that, she's going to talk to you, I know that already. There's a door over there. And I said, thank you. I went there and I thought, shall I go back or shall I knock? I knocked. And within seconds, Dietrich said,
Thank you. What do you still? Was that okay? Did you get what you? Yeah, good. Oh, he's pushing him out of the way. So listen. Oh, great, you got it. Yeah. Good. I will meet him in the weekend.
I never had any negative responses to me being German. In Europe I had a lot, going to France and even in Spain. Being German, that caused me often some problems. Here in America I really felt welcome being German. That's one of the main reasons I like being here. There was a woman coming in here. She figured out that I was German and she was leaving Germany. And she was Jewish, and she asked me questions, and we talked about the Holocaust. So it's not a thing I avoid talking about, but I don't feel like anyone makes me somehow responsible for it as a son of a man who was that age and lived through that time. I don't know, it might have been different if I was 80 years old, twice my age. But yeah, as I said, me personally, I really feel welcome here.
Ich hatte einen Kameraden, einen besten findest du nicht. Eine Kugel kam geflogen, kalt sie mir oder kalt sie dir. Sie hat ihn weggerissen, lag zu meiner Baptism of fire. Here it says, high up we feel in the east wind day's brave venture. We reach for the sun, having the earth.
And it's
Every third Friday in the month, I'll have little in-store concerts. I feature a certain band. For example, in August, I have a tango band here with one of the best Argentinian bandoneon players. And so they will play here in August. In September, I will have an Irish band. And the plans for klezmer bands and Tex-Mex. This, by the way, is a tie only available in this store, 100% silk. Not quite a high-profile fashion statement with a shirt, but the tie is definitely worth buying for $25. Designed by one of my friends who is a textile designer and made here in America. So was that cool?
Nobody's throwing tomatoes at me?
No.